A year ago, I thought I had the perfect job, a steady paycheck, coworkers I trusted, and a boss who seemed charming at first glance. But within weeks, that boss turned my entire workplace against me. Files vanished under my name, whispers spread like wildfire, and every meeting felt like a firing squad. I didn't know it yet, but I wasn't just an employee anymore. I was prey. And what happened next still keeps me awake at night. Betrayal hurts the most when it comes from the people you're forced to see every day, and some revenge stories burn slow, others explode without warning. This one, it does both. Subscribe now, hit the bell, and let's dive into a tale that will make you question who you can trust in your own workplace, because this isn't just another revenge story, it's survival. I still remember the exact day our new manager walked through the glass doors of our office. It was Monday morning, the kind of morning where the fluorescent lights above hummed louder than usual, and the coffee machine was already jammed with a line of bleary-eyed coworkers. The office smelled of burnt espresso and printer ink the way it always did at the start of the week. Her name was Melissa Carter, and she walked in like she owned the place. She wasn't technically taller than me, maybe 5'6" in heels, but she carried herself like someone a foot taller. Perfectly pressed blazer, lipstick sharp as a knife, that fake warm smile plastered on her face as though she had practiced it in the mirror, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. I noticed that immediately. "Good morning, team," she announced, syrupy, confident. "I'm so excited to be working with all of you. We're going to do great things together." At first, everyone clapped. That awkward, polite clap you give when you don't know what else to do. I clapped too, because what else could I do? But even then, something in me felt uneasy. I can't explain it, just a tightness in my gut, like when you sense the weather changing before the clouds even form. The first week was a performance. Melissa breezed from desk to desk, memorizing names in seconds, laughing a little too loud at people's jokes, handing out compliments like candy. "Love your dress, Amanda. That's such a shark tie, Derek. Oh my gosh, did you bake these muffins yourself?" On the surface, she was charming. But here's the thing. Charm can be camouflage. Have you ever met someone who says all the right words, but you can't shake the feeling they're sizing you up, piece by piece, deciding where to cut? That was Melissa. By Wednesday, the cracks were already showing. In our first team meeting, she shut down a suggestion I made before I could even finish. I'd been leading a client retention project for months, and when I tried to give an update, she waved her hand like she was swatting a fly. "Let's not get bogged down in old processes," she said, eyes flicking over me before landing on someone else. "We'll take a more dynamic approach." Dynamic. That was her favorite word. Translation, whatever your idea, forget it. Her way or no way. By Friday, I realized things weren't just shifting, they were tilting. Normally, our Friday wrap-up meetings were casual. End-of-week chatter, people joking, easing into the weekend. But under Melissa, it turned into something else. She perched at the head of the table like a queen holding court, eyes darting, testing each of us. Every comment felt like a trap, every answer graded. When Derek mentioned a new client lead he was pursuing, Melissa leaned forward and said, "Are you sure you're capable of handling that? Maybe someone else should oversee it." The air went heavy. Derek laughed nervously. I kept my mouth shut, but my chest burned, because I knew my turn was coming. It did. When I brought up a small success we'd had, a client renewal I'd negotiated after weeks of follow-ups, Melissa smiled, but it wasn't a congratulatory smile. It was sharp, calculating. "Interesting," she said slowly, as though tasting the word. "But I wonder if that client renewed because of you, or in spite of you." The room went silent. Nobody defended me. Nobody even looked at me. My ears rang, my pulse hammered in my throat. Do you know that feeling? When humiliation creeps hot across your skin, but you're forced to sit still, frozen because reacting would only make it worse. Yeah, that was me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every word, every smirk, every subtle dismissal. Was I overreacting? Maybe Melissa was just tough, right? Maybe I was being sensitive. But no, deep down, I knew. I knew the game had changed the second she walked in. She wasn't here to lead. She was here to conquer. And me? I wasn't a teammate anymore. I was prey. If my nightmare was Melissa's arrival, then what she did next was the slow, deliberate process of being cut out of my own world. At first, it was subtle. Meetings would be scheduled, and somehow my calendar invite would get lost. I'd find out after the fact when I passed by the conference room and saw everyone gathered inside. Everyone but me. The first time it happened, I brushed it off. Maybe IT glitched, maybe Melissa just forgot. But when it happened a second time, then a third, I knew better. This wasn't an accident. And you know the worst part? Nobody said a damn thing. Not one coworker messaged me like, "Hey, are you joining?" Not one person slipped up and said, "Oh, we already discussed that in the meeting earlier." It was like they'd all silently agreed, pretend I didn't exist. The cafeteria became a battlefield. I used to sit with a group. Derek, Amanda, a couple of analysts from the finance side. We weren't best friends, but we were friendly. Shared lunches, shared gossip, shared that unspoken bond of surviving corporate chaos together. But suddenly things shifted. The first time I walked up to our usual table and set my tray down, I swear the air went colder. Derek gave me a weak half smile, Amanda avoided my eyes, and then, one by one, they all got up. "Oh, I forgot I had a call. Need to grab something from my desk. Gotta run." And just like that, I was left alone sitting. You know how humiliating it feels to sit in a crowded cafeteria, surrounded by the noise of conversations and laughter, but realize not a single voice is speaking to you? To feel the stares, not pitying, not kind, but curious, like they're watching a slow-motion car crash. Yeah, that was my lunch hour. Every damn day. At first, I told myself maybe it was paranoia. Maybe I was imagining the whispers, but no, they whispered. Loud enough for me to hear, but quiet enough to deny if I confronted them. I'd walk past Amanda's desk and hear, "Well, Melissa said," followed by giggles, or I'd catch Derek muttering something about dead weight just as I turned the corner. Conversation stopped when I entered a room. Eyes darted. It wasn't just exclusion anymore, it was erasure. Here's the part that still burns. I worked hard for that place. Years of late nights, weekends lost, missing birthdays and anniversaries because the deadline couldn't wait. I'd given blood, sweat, and sanity to build my reputation there. And in a matter of weeks, Melissa managed to turn everyone against me. How? Simple. Fear. She'd handpick favorites. Amanda, Derek, a couple of newer hires. She showered them with attention, pulled them into her office for special projects, praised them in public meetings. And everyone else left scrambling for scraps. The message was clear. You're either with Melissa or you're against her. Guess which side I was shoved onto? Nights became unbearable. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what I'd done wrong. Was I really that unlikable? Had I offended someone without realizing it? Was Melissa right? Was I incompetent? Dead weight? But deep down, I knew the truth. It wasn't about competence. It wasn't about mistakes. It was about control. Melissa couldn't control me, and that made me dangerous. So instead of breaking me directly, she isolated me, cut me off from every source of support until I was nothing but a shadow wandering the office halls. And let me tell you, isolation in a crowded room hits harder than loneliness at home. When you're surrounded by people but completely invisible, it does something to your soul. Have you ever felt that? That slow erosion of your humanity? Like you're fading in plain sight? The breaking point came one Thursday. I'd been excluded from yet another project meeting. This time, I forced myself in. I walked straight into the conference room, sat down at the table, and dared anyone to tell me to leave. Melissa didn't even look surprised. "Oh," she said, her smile razor thin. "I didn't realize you were available. We've already covered most of the important points, but feel free to listen in." The way she said it, like I was a child intruding on grown-ups, My hands clenched under the table, nails digging into my palms so hard I almost drew blood. Throughout the meeting, every time I opened my mouth, she cut me off. "That's not relevant. We've already tried that. Let's hear from someone else." By the end, my voice felt like it didn't belong to me anymore. I left the room shaking, not with fear, but with humiliation, rage. In the hallway, I caught Derek's eye. For half a second, I thought maybe he'd say something. Maybe he'd whisper, "Hang in there," or even just give me that look, that silent solidarity we used to share. But no, he looked away. Just looked away. And that's when it hit me. Melissa had won. Not because she was smarter, not because she was better, but because she understood the power of isolation. People will do anything to avoid being the outcast, even betray someone they once called a friend. That day, I realized something chilling. They weren't just cutting me out. They were erasing me. If being cut off was Melissa's first weapon, framing me was her second. It started with little things, a missing file here, a misplaced spreadsheet there. Nothing huge at first, just enough to make me look sloppy. One Monday morning, I opened my inbox to find a curt email from Melissa. "Where's the Johnson quarterly report? It was due last Friday. This is unacceptable." My stomach dropped. I had finished the Johnson report. I remembered staying late Thursday night, polishing it, triple-checking the numbers, even emailing it directly to her. I scrolled through my sent folder. Nothing. No trace of it. For a split second, I wondered if I'd lost my mind. Maybe I only thought I sent it. Maybe I was more frazzled than I realized. But then, a darker thought crept in. What if the email wasn't missing? What if it was deleted? By Wednesday, it happened again. This time, it was an error in a budget sheet, an error that carried my name in the metadata. Melissa called it out during a team meeting, holding the paper up like evidence in a courtroom. "Can anyone explain to me how a $10,000 discrepancy ended up in this report? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like negligence." Her eyes locked onto me. Heat flushed up my neck. I knew I hadn't touched that report. I hadn't even been assigned to it. But there it was, my name in the system notes. Everyone's head swiveled toward me, waiting. The silence was suffocating. I didn't do that report. That wasn't mine. Melissa tilted her head, fake sympathy dripping from her smile. "Oh, then how do you explain your name on it?" I wanted to scream, to accuse her, to shout that something wasn't right. But how do you accuse your manager of sabotaging you without proof? So I sat there, burning alive in silence. That was the beginning of a pattern. Files went missing from shared drives, always ones I'd been responsible for. Reports I hadn't touched suddenly had glaring mistakes authored by me. Clients complained about emails they claimed I'd sent, emails I'd never even written. It was like someone had cloned me, a shadow version of me running around leaving destruction in my name. And every time, Melissa was right there to highlight it. Not in private, not in one-on-one corrections. No, she saved it for the meetings, for the big moments. "So unfortunate this keeps happening," she'd say with a theatrical sigh, eyes full of fake disappointment. "We'll need to address this pattern of mistakes, won't we?" Pattern. That word sliced through me. She was building a case. Slowly, meticulously, she was laying bricks of evidence until the wall of failure surrounded me. The paranoia was the worst part. Every time I saved a file, I double-checked it, triple-checked it, printed backups, emailed copies to myself. I started keeping a personal flash drive of everything I worked on because I didn't trust the system anymore. But even then, things still vanished. And I couldn't prove a thing. IT logs showed nothing unusual, no unauthorized access. It was like Melissa had her fingerprints wiped clean. Do you know what that does to a person? To feel reality slipping? To question your own memory, your own sanity? I'd wake up at 3 a.m. replaying every click, every keystroke, wondering if maybe it really was me screwing up. Maybe Melissa was right. Maybe I was losing it. Have you ever been gaslit so thoroughly you start believing your enemy's version of you? Then came the moment that nearly broke me. Big client presentation. Weeks of prep. I'd built a deck so clean, so airtight, it practically glowed. I rehearsed it until I could recite it in my sleep. The morning of, I opened the file to give it one last look. My jaw hit the floor. Slides were missing. Numbers were scrambled. Charts didn't match the data. It was chaos, nonsense, like a toddler had gone in and rearranged everything. My chest seized. I checked the timestamp, last modified at 2 a.m. I hadn't even been online. I sprinted to IT, begged them to pull logs, check for external edits. They shrugged. Looks like it was done under your login. Of course it did. I had 2 hours to salvage the wreckage. 2 hours to rebuild weeks of work. By the time I stood in front of that conference room, palms sweaty, throat dry, I already knew I was walking into a trap. I started presenting. First slide, fine. Second slide, numbers didn't match. Melissa interrupted immediately. Hold on, these figures don't align. Can you clarify? I fumbled, scrambling to explain, trying to reorient the data in real time. Murmurs rippled across the table. Sweat rolled down my spine. By the fourth slide, it was over. Melissa leaned back in her chair, smirk tugging at her lips. This is disappointing, she said loud enough for the executives to hear. Sloppy work reflects poorly on all of us. Laughter. Actual laughter spread across the room. Not kind, not nervous, cruel. I felt my throat tighten, my vision blur. That was the moment something inside me snapped. That night, I didn't cry. Not this time. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the glow of my laptop, replaying every humiliation. And I made a decision. If Melissa wanted war, she would get war. But not the kind she expected. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't quit. I wouldn't storm into HR with accusations I couldn't prove. No, I'd watch. I'd wait. And when the time was right, I'd make sure Melissa's empire of lies came crashing down. Because here's the thing about people like her. They always slip up. Arrogance makes them sloppy. And when she did, I'd be ready. But until then, I had to survive. Up until this point, Melissa's games were a quiet war. Silent sabotage, whispers, missing files, a private torment that left me isolated and paranoid. But the next phase, she decided to go public. And when I say public, I mean she dragged my name through the mud in front of the entire team, executives included. She didn't just want me sidelined anymore. She wanted me destroyed. It was a Wednesday, mid-quarter review, one of those all-hands meetings where the entire floor packed into the glass-walled conference room, coffee cups in hand, PowerPoints loaded, ready to rattle off numbers. I hated those meetings even before Melissa. Too much posturing, too much fake enthusiasm. But now they felt like a firing squad. Melissa kicked things off with her usual charm offensive, smiling, cracking a joke, calling people rock stars for hitting metrics. Everyone laughed in the right places, everyone smiled when she smiled. And then it was my turn. I'd been tasked with presenting client renewal data. Normally, that would have been a slam dunk. I'd spent weeks running analyses, double-checking retention rates, building clean visualizations. I was ready, or so I thought. I walked to the front, clicked my laptop open, and froze. The slides weren't mine. Gone were the clean charts and concise bullet points I'd built. In their place, a mess. Graphs mislabeled, numbers scrambled. One slide literally had duplicate data pasted over itself, like a collage of nonsense. My throat tightened. My hands went clammy on the clicker. I glanced at Melissa. She sat at the head of the table, chin propped on her hand, watching me with that same little smirk, like a cat waiting to see how the mouse would squirm. I tried to salvage it. Sorry, it looks like there's been a formatting issue. The data here... Melissa cut in. Formatting issue or preparation issue? A few chuckles around the table. My pulse roared in my ears. No, the data itself is solid. Then why does this chart show a 40% drop when last quarter's report showed growth? I opened my mouth, closed it, because the numbers were wrong, and I hadn't written them. Do you even understand your own data? She asked loud enough to echo off the glass. Laughter this time wasn't just chuckles.
It spread, scattered at first, then rolling like a wave. Some people tried to cover it with coughs, but others didn't bother. Heat flooded my face, my chest, my ears. I wanted the floor to open and swallow me whole. Every eye in the room pinned me like insects under glass. I stumbled through 2 more slides, each one riddled with errors I hadn't made, each one an opening for Melissa to slice me down again. By the end, my voice was shaking. I couldn't look at anyone. I just muttered, "That concludes my section," and sat down. Melissa gave me a sweet, fake smile. "Thank you for that effort." The room laughed again. I barely remember leaving that room. My body was on autopilot, shoving my laptop into my bag, walking stiff-legged down the hall. But I remember the whispers, the muffled snickers behind me, the sideways glances that said, "God, glad that wasn't me." When I reached my desk, I locked my screen and walked straight to the bathroom. I stood in front of the mirror, gripping the sink, watching myself shake. My face was pale, eyes glassy, lips trembling. I didn't recognize the person staring back. How do you explain that kind of humiliation? It's not just embarrassment, it's annihilation. Your reputation, your credibility, your dignity, all shredded in front of the very people who decide your career. And the worst part? I knew Melissa had engineered every second of it. That night, I sat in the dark of my apartment, phone buzzing with unread emails, laptop shut. For weeks, I'd cried myself to sleep. For weeks, I'd begged the universe for relief, for someone, anyone, to see what was happening. But that night, no tears came. I was hollow, burned out, exhausted beyond grief. And in that silence, something shifted. The humiliation didn't break me, it hardened me. Melissa thought she'd stripped me bare, but what she really did was carve out the last of my fear. I had nothing left to lose. And that made me dangerous. I lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling, replaying her smirk, her interruptions, the laughter echoing in my ears. By sunrise, my decision was made. No more waiting, no more hoping someone would notice, no more surviving. It was time to plan. And once I started, I wouldn't stop until Melissa had nothing left.
After the public execution that was my last presentation, I thought I was truly alone. Days passed in a haze. I kept my head down, spoke less, existed in the office like a ghost. Melissa strutted around like she'd conquered a kingdom, her favorites trailing behind her, laughing at her jokes, hanging on her every word. If you've ever been the pariah in your own workplace, you know the weight I carried. The stares, the silence, the whispers. Every day felt like walking into enemy territory. I told myself, survive. Just keep your head down, don't give her another excuse to bury you. But fate had other plans. It was a Tuesday morning. The office was unusually quiet, that lull before people finished their first coffee. I was at my desk, staring at a spreadsheet, brain fog thick as soup, when something slid across the surface in front of me. I looked down. A flash drive. Small, black, unmarked. I snapped my head up. Standing there was Jacob. Now, Jacob wasn't one of Melissa's chosen. Quite the opposite. He was the kind of guy you forgot was even in the room. Low voice, avoided eye contact, always stuck to the background. He did his work well, but he never drew attention. He leaned down, barely above a whisper. "You didn't get this from me." And just like that, he walked away. My heart pounded. My palms went clammy against the plastic. What was this? A prank? A trap? Was Melissa watching? I glanced around. Nobody seemed to notice. Melissa was across the room, talking animatedly with Amanda. I slipped the flash drive into my pocket like it was contraband, like security guards might tackle me if they saw. The rest of the day, I couldn't focus. My mind spun. What the hell had Jacob given me, and why? By the time I got home, I was shaking. I shut my blinds, triple-checked my door lock, and finally, with hands trembling, plugged the drive into my laptop. What I saw made my stomach drop. Emails. Dozens of them. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Chains between Melissa and her favorites, Amanda, Derek, a couple of others. Subject lines about strategy, inside jokes, complaints about me. But then the real content hit me. Plots. Actual written plots to discredit me. Make sure the Johnson report gets deleted before Friday. She'll take the fall. Switch the numbers on the renewal slides. Executives need to see her fail. LOL, can't believe they still trust her with data. This will be too easy. Line after line. Evidence of sabotage. Proof I wasn't crazy. My hands shook as I scrolled. Each email was a dagger, but each dagger was also a lifeline. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't doubting my sanity. I had proof. And most of all, I wasn't alone. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, the glow of the screen lighting my face, rereading every email, every message. The humiliation, the whispers, the sabotage, all of it laid bare in black and white. It was like staring at my own autopsy report. But buried in the horror was something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. Because now, I had the receipts. The next morning, I cornered Jacob in the break room. He was pouring coffee, hands shaking just slightly, as though he knew I'd approach him. I asked him, why? He didn't look at me, just stirred sugar into his mug. Because I've seen what she does. To you. To others before you. I froze. Others? He nodded. You're not the first. Just the first to survive this long. That sent a chill down my spine. I pressed, why me? Jacob finally looked at me. His eyes were tired, haunted. Because you might actually fight back. And then he walked away, leaving me holding that weighty silence, coffee steam rising between us like smoke from a gun. All day I thought about his words, others before you. How many careers had Melissa destroyed? How many reputations had she smeared beyond repair? And nobody fought back? I looked at the flash drive again, tucked safely in my bag. Proof that she wasn't invincible. Proof that she wasn't untouchable. For the first time in weeks, I straightened my back when I walked through the office. Melissa noticed it. I saw her eyes narrow when I passed her. She didn't know what had changed, not yet. But inside me, a seed had been planted. And soon, it would grow into something she couldn't cut down. After weeks of humiliation and whispers, I finally had a weapon. The question was, how to use it without blowing myself up in the process. You don't just walk into HR waving a flash drive and scream, "Look what they did to me!" That's how you get branded as unstable, desperate, paranoid. And Melissa? She'd spin it faster than I could blink. She was the queen of narrative. So I had to be smarter. Smarter than her. Step 1 was backup. I copied everything onto an encrypted folder in the cloud. 2 different accounts. Then again onto an old external drive I hadn't touched in years. And once more, printed hard copies that I sealed in a plain envelope and slipped into the bottom drawer of my desk at home. Paranoid? Maybe, but I knew Melissa. If she ever caught a whiff of what I had, she'd burn my entire life to ashes just to keep her kingdom intact. So I backed up the backups. Step 2 was documentation. If I was going to survive this, it couldn't just be emails. It had to be a pattern, a story that made sense even to someone outside the office. So every night, I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook and wrote everything down. Dates, times, who said what, who mysteriously forgot to CC me, who conveniently lost attachments I'd sent, who spread which rumor in the break room. Every detail mattered. I even started carrying a little recorder in my pocket. Legal in my state, thankfully. I captured conversations, Amanda mocking me behind my back, Derek telling Melissa he made the switch on the slides. At first, it felt paranoid, but soon it felt like insurance.
Because now, every whisper was another brick in the wall I was building, a wall that would eventually collapse on top of them. Step 3 was patience. And let me tell you, patience is the hardest part when you're burning with rage. Every day, I walked into that office, forced to smile while Melissa sharpened her knives. Every day, I listened to her laugh with Amanda, boast about her influence, parade around like she owns the place. Meanwhile, I sat quietly, biding my time, letting them think I was still broken. Melissa thought she had crushed me. She thought I was just a husk, surviving paycheck to paycheck, waiting for her approval like a starving dog. She had no idea I was setting the stage for her downfall. And then came the first test. A mistake appeared in one of my reports. Not my mistake, Derek's. He'd switched numbers again. But this time, I'd caught it. I had the original, time-stamped, I had the email chain. And best of all, I had him admitting it on recording. It took everything in me not to slam it down in Melissa's face and scream, "Checkmate!" But no, not yet. Instead, I quietly corrected it, let her think I hadn't noticed, and filed it away in my evidence folder. Every act of sabotage they tried now became ammunition for me. Jacob stayed quiet through all of this. We'd exchange small nods in the hallway, nothing more. That was the deal. But sometimes I caught his eye, and I knew he was watching too. One afternoon, he slipped me another email chain. This one was worse. Melissa wasn't just targeting me. She was already talking about her next victim, a junior analyst, bright, young, fresh out of grad school, someone who had no idea the wolf she was working under. "She's too ambitious. Let's cut her down before she thinks she's special." My blood boiled. It wasn't just about me anymore. Melissa was a predator, and Jacob was right. I might be the only one who could stop her. By the end of that month, my folder had grown fat. Printed emails, recordings, notes, screenshots, a mountain of evidence so heavy it could crush Melissa's empire in one strike. But still, I waited. Because I didn't just want survival. I didn't just want to clear my name. I wanted Melissa destroyed. I wanted every single person in that office to see the queen stripped of her crown. I wanted her legacy burned down to ashes, her throne ripped out from under her, her empire turned into rubble. And for that, I needed the perfect moment. There's this thing that happens when predators get too comfortable. They stop hiding their teeth. Melissa had spent months dismantling me piece by piece, gaslighting me, humiliating me, turning my coworkers into her puppets. She thought she had won, and when people think they've won, they get sloppy. That's exactly what happened. The first sign? Melissa stopped pretending to care about protocol. Budget numbers went missing. Meetings were cut short when she couldn't explain decisions. She'd strut around the office bragging about how this place runs on me. I remember one lunch in particular. We were in the break room, a bunch of us microwaving leftovers. Melissa waltzed in, heels clicking like a countdown to misery. She leaned against the counter and laughed. Honestly, if I disappeared for a week, the whole company would fall apart. You'd all be lost without me. People chuckled nervously, but I saw the flash of irritation in a few faces. Even Amanda, her #1 cheerleader, shifted uncomfortably. Melissa didn't notice. She'd never noticed. She was too busy talking about herself. And me? I just sat in the corner, stirring cold pasta, pretending to smile. But inside, I was cataloging every word. The second sign was riskier. Melissa started cutting corners, not just little ones, big ones. She falsified hours on project reports, inflated budgets, and even signed off on a supplier invoice that didn't add up. Maybe once upon a time I would have let it slide, scared of retaliation. But now, I documented everything. Screenshots, originals, cross-references. Her empire wasn't just built on manipulation. It was built on fraud. And fraud, I could prove. What would you do in my shoes? Would you go to HR? Straight to the board? Or would you wait, gathering just enough rope for them to hang themselves? I chose patience. The third sign, the one that almost made me snap, was personal. We were in a Monday meeting. Melissa stood at the head of the conference table, flicking through slides I had made. My numbers, my analysis, my late night hours. But guess whose name was on the report? Hers. When I raised a hand to speak, she cut me off. Thanks, Derek, for double-checking those figures. Really saved us a headache. The room nodded in approval. Derek sat there smirking. And me? My chest felt like it was caving in. Because she wasn't just sabotaging me anymore. She was erasing me. I clenched my pen so hard it nearly snapped in half. But I didn't explode. Not yet. Instead, I wrote down the date, the time, the project name. Added to the folder. But here's the thing about holding in rage. It builds pressure. And pressure always finds a release. For me, that moment came 2 weeks later. Melissa was in rare form that day. She strutted through the office barking orders, interrupting calls, tossing files onto desks like confetti. By the time the afternoon meeting rolled around, everyone was already on edge. And then she decided to make me her punchline. So, about last quarter's report, let's make sure we don't have another Alex situation, shall we? The room laughed. My ears burned. An Alex situation. That was what she called it now. Months of sabotage, lies, and stolen work reduced to a joke with my name on it. I looked around the table. Some people laughed out of fear. Others looked away. Jacob wouldn't even meet my eyes. And Melissa? She was glowing. I don't remember the exact words I said, but I remember my voice. Calm. Cold. Deadly. Funny you mentioned that, Melissa, because I've been keeping track of all those situations. Every single one. The laughter died instantly. Melissa froze for a second, but I saw it. A flicker of panic in her eyes. And in that moment, I knew. She finally realized I wasn't broken. The next few days were like walking on glass. Melissa's smile got tighter. Her jokes about me vanished. She stopped sending Amanda to poke holes in my reports. Instead, she hovered, watching me, waiting. And I pretended not to notice. I went about my work like nothing had changed. But inside, I was grinning. Because Melissa wasn't in control anymore. She was afraid. The breaking point wasn't one moment. It was a series of cracks forming all at once. Her allies started to question her decisions. Amanda slipped in her loyalty, looking annoyed when Melissa dumped grunt work on her. Derek started hedging his bets, chatting with executives when Melissa wasn't around. The whispers weren't just about me anymore. They were about her. And every whisper was fuel. Because I knew the empire was crumbling. That night, sitting in my apartment with the folder spread across the table, I finally let myself smile for real. This wasn't survival anymore. This was war. And Melissa had no idea the pin was already pulled.
The boardroom smelled like coffee and money. You ever walk into a room and instantly feel the weight of power pressing down on you? That's what this was. Long mahogany table, leather chairs, the kind that squeak only when someone important leans back. The executive team sat polished and unreadable, their eyes sharp, their pens poised. And at the head of the table, Melissa. She walked in like she owned the air itself. Crisp white blouse, hair pulled back tight, that smug half-smile plastered across her face. Her heels clicked like a countdown to my execution. Except this time, the noose wasn't around my neck. It was around hers. She started the meeting as if nothing was wrong. Charming, confident, a rehearsed little laugh here, a compliment there. Good morning, everyone. Let's talk about Q2 performance. We've had some incredible results thanks to the team's hard work under my leadership. Under my leadership. I sat there, palms sweating under the table, folder heavy in my lap. My heart was pounding so loud I swore everyone could hear it. For weeks, I'd been preparing for this exact moment. But when you're staring down the lion in its den, preparation only takes you so far. Melissa clicked to the first slide. Of course, it was my work, my numbers, my research, stolen and dressed up in her name. As you can see, the cost reductions we implemented last quarter are already paying off. Her voice droned on, my stomach churned, and then, almost without thinking, I moved. I stood. Chairs shifted, heads turned. Melissa's smile faltered just a fraction. "Alex, did you have something to add?" I didn't speak right away. I let the silence stretch, heavy and uncomfortable, until it filled every corner of the room. My hands trembled as I set the folder down on the polished table. "Actually, yes, I do." And then I slid it across. The folder landed in front of Mr. Henderson, the CFO. He raised a brow, flipped it open, and began reading. Melissa chuckled lightly, trying to play it off. "Oh, is this another one of your concerns, Alex?" Her tone dripped with condescension, the same tone she'd used to belittle me in front of the team 100 times before. But the room wasn't laughing this time. Mr. Henderson's eyes narrowed as he flipped to the second page, then the third. The room was dead silent except for the soft sound of paper turning. "What is this?" he asked finally. My voice cracked but held steady. "That's every falsified report, every stolen idea, every altered file with my name attached, and emails, dozens of them, showing exactly how Melissa orchestrated it." I looked straight at her. It wasn't just me she targeted. She's been sabotaging anyone she sees as competition. Melissa's smile vanished. She reached for the folder, but Mr. Henderson pulled it closer, almost protectively. Across the table, another executive leaned in, scanning the emails with a scowl. Melissa's voice rose sharp and defensive. "This is absurd. Anyone can fake emails. Alex is clearly bitter, and there are recordings, too." She cut in. Her head snapped toward me. "What?" she said with confused voice. "Conversations, meetings, every word backed up, with timestamps, with witnesses." The room erupted in whispers. Melissa's face drained of color. For the first time since she arrived at the company, she didn't look powerful. She looked cornered. She tried to recover, of course. That was her specialty. "You're really going to take his word over mine after everything I've done for this company? Look at the numbers. Look at the growth under my leadership." But the executives weren't looking at her slides anymore. They were passing the folder down the table, page after damning page. Amanda shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Derek suddenly found the ceiling fascinating. Jacob, sitting near the back, caught my eye and gave the smallest, most imperceptible nod. And Melissa? She was unraveling. Then came the silence. Not the kind that's empty, but the kind that's crushing. The kind that means decisions are being made behind closed faces. Finally, Mr. Henderson closed the folder with a soft thud. "Melissa, step outside." Her jaw dropped. "Excuse me? This is my meeting." "Step outside," Mr. Henderson snapped at her. His tone left no room for argument. Melissa's eyes darted around the room, searching for backup. Amanda avoided her gaze. Derek leaned back, expression blank. Her allies were already abandoning ship. She scoffed, grabbed her laptop, and stormed out. The door slammed so hard the glass rattled. And then every eye in the room turned to me. My hands were shaking, my throat dry. "Alex," Mr. Henderson said slowly, "how long have you been collecting this?" "Months," I admitted, "ever since she started targeting me. I didn't want to believe it at first, but it wasn't just me. She would have gone after anyone." I swallowed hard. I couldn't let her keep doing it. The room stayed silent, but it wasn't hostile. It was heavy, serious. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like prey. I felt like the hunter. You ever watch a tower fall? Not slowly, not gracefully, but all at once, crashing in on itself the second one support beam gives way? That's what it was like watching Melissa's career implode. And the best part? It didn't take weeks. It didn't take days. It took less than an hour. They kept her waiting in the hallway for 15 minutes, long enough to sweat, long enough to know the tide had turned. When she stormed back in, her smile was gone. The executives had the folders spread across the table like a crime scene file. Pages dog-eared, emails highlighted, recordings queued up on someone's laptop. Melissa sat down slowly, eyes darting. "This is a witch hunt," she said finally. "Alex has been unstable for months. Everyone knows it. Are you really going to risk this company's future on some fabricated nonsense?" Her voice cracked, just a little, but enough. Because when predators show fear, the pack turns on them. One of the executives, Ms. Chen, the COO, leaned forward, eyes like knives. "Melissa, do you deny sending these emails?" Melissa blinked. Well, context matters. Of course, things look bad when... Do you deny altering these reports?" She went silent for a moment. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Everyone makes adjustments," she tried to defend herself. "Fraud isn't an adjustment," Miss Chen snapped. Her voice sliced through the air. Melissa flinched. For the first time since she arrived at the company, she wasn't in control. She was a bug under glass, squirming while the magnifying glass burned. The others piled on. The head of compliance, the legal advisor, even the HR director, who normally looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, spoke up. Every question was a trap. Every answer dug her hole deeper. And me? I sat in silence, watching. Months of pain, isolation, and humiliation condensed into this single moment of quiet satisfaction. What would you have done? Sat there smug, or stayed stone-faced? I chose silence because Melissa didn't need my words anymore. The evidence spoke for itself. Amanda tried to jump in, mumbling something about team dynamics and misunderstandings, but Ms. Chen shut her down with one icy glare. Derek? He stayed quiet, arms crossed, watching the ship sink. Jacob? He sat in the back, eyes steady, a ghost of a smile tugging at his lips. Melissa looked around, desperate for backup, but her allies had already scattered. The queen was naked, and no one was coming to shield her. By the 40-minute mark, it was over. Mr. Henderson closed the folder with finality. "Melissa, your employment is terminated. Effective immediately." No hesitation, no negotiation, just execution. Melissa's face went white. "You can't do this. I built this department. You'll collapse without me." "We'll manage," Mr. Henderson answered. The HR director slid a packet across the table. Standard termination papers. Melissa didn't touch them. She just sat there, trembling, rage twisting her features. "This isn't over," she hissed, eyes darting to me. "You think you've won? You're nothing without me. Nothing!" But the room had already turned away. Security was called. 2 guards appeared at the door, quiet but firm. Melissa tried to gather her things, but they stopped her. Company property. Everything would be sorted later. She screamed, cursed, called everyone cowards. But in the end, she walked out empty-handed. The door closed behind her with a soft click. And just like that, the empire she'd built on lies, fear, and stolen credit collapsed into dust. The meeting ended shortly after that. No applause, no congratulations, just a heavy silence as people shuffled their papers and avoided eye contact. But me? I sat there, heart pounding, hands shaking, staring at the empty chair where Melissa had been. For months, that chair had been a throne. Now, it was just wood and leather. And I realized something. The war was over. And I had survived.
You'd think victory would taste sweet. After months of humiliation, gaslighting, and sabotage, after being isolated, mocked, erased, you'd think watching Melissa get dragged out by security would feel like champagne on the tongue. But the truth? It felt quiet. Not sweet, not bitter, just quiet. Like the storm had finally passed,
and all that was left was wreckage. The office was different the next day. Her presence had been like perfume, thick, suffocating, clinging to every corner. But when I walked in, it was gone. No click of her heels, no barked orders, no fake smile. Just silence. People whispered, of course. Amanda avoided my eyes. Derek buried himself in spreadsheets. Jacob gave me the smallest nod of acknowledgement, nothing more. It was like Melissa had never existed, and yet her shadow lingered. A week later, HR called me in. They offered apologies, half-hearted ones, corporate ones. Said they should have caught the red flags earlier. Said they appreciated my diligence in documenting the truth. Then came the offer. A promotion, a shiny new title, more pay, more responsibility. It should have felt like vindication, but sitting there looking at the contract, all I could think about was every night I'd spent at my kitchen table scribbling notes with shaking hands, every humiliating meeting, every time Melissa had made me feel small, stupid, disposable. This wasn't victory. This was survival dressed up in a nicer paycheck. I signed anyway, because survival still mattered. Melissa didn't go quietly. I heard rumors she tried to spin the story, said she'd been betrayed, that I was some kind of obsessed employee who fabricated everything. But the proof was too strong. The company blacklisted her. Word spread. In our industry, reputation is currency, and hers was worthless now. Sometimes I wondered where she ended up. Did she find another job in some smaller firm? Did she try to reinvent herself under a new title? Or was she sitting in an apartment somewhere, seething, plotting, cursing my name? Would you have checked? Or would you have let the ghost fade? As for me, I chose to let her fade. But here's the thing about revenge. No one tells you about the cost. Yes, I was free. Yes, justice was served. But freedom didn't erase the damage. I still flinched when someone laughed in a meeting, half convinced it was at my expense. I still hesitated to share ideas, waiting for the knife in the back. Melissa had been gone for weeks, but the paranoia she planted in me lingered like poison. Revenge doesn't make you powerful. It just makes you free. Months passed. My new role settled in. People started treating me with respect again. Real respect, not the fake kind Melissa commanded through fear. Sometimes, late at night, I'd open the folder one last time, the emails, the reports, the recordings. Proof of everything I'd endured. And then I'd close it, put it back in the drawer. Because I didn't need it anymore. I'd already won. Looking back now, I realize Melissa tried to bury me. She tried to erase me, humiliate me, crush me until I quit or broke. But here I am, not buried, but rooted. Stronger than I ever thought I could be. And though the scars remain, though the trust comes slower now, though the laughs in the break room still make me second guess, I survived. And survival is its own kind of victory. If this story pulled you in, if you could feel the tension in that office, the sting of betrayal, and the rush of finally seeing justice served, do me a favor. Smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done if a boss turned your entire workplace against you? Would you fight back quietly like I did, gather the receipts, or walk away and start fresh somewhere new? Have you ever had a toxic boss, or worse, a whole team try to erase you? Share your story below. I read every single comment, and your voices are what make these stories come alive. And if you want more long-form, slow-burn revenge narratives, raw, emotional, and crafted to make you feel every betrayal and every triumph, turn on that notification bell, because next time we're diving into another story where justice doesn't just knock, it kicks the door down.